Mindfulness, the supreme tool to master one's life. In a world overflowing with noise, distractions, and demands, many people feel trapped in a cycle of stress, confusion, and dissatisfaction. Technology keeps us endlessly connected, yet we are more anxious and lonely than ever. Work consumes our energy, relationships strain under pressure, and our minds rarely find peace. We chase success, love, and happiness, but too often we feel burned out, restless, and unfulfilled. What if the solution was not outside us, but within us? What if mastering life did not require wealth, fame, or control over circumstances, but rather mastery over the mind itself? This is where mindfulness emerges as the supreme tool. Rooted in ancient wisdom, yet validated by modern science, mindfulness is the art of living with awareness, presence, and clarity. It is not about escaping the world, but engaging with it more deeply. Through mindfulness, we learn to see our thoughts clearly, manage emotions skillfully, and transform daily life into a path of growth and freedom. I. Understanding mindfulness, roots, science, and misconceptions. The origins of mindfulness in Buddhist practice. The word mindfulness is everywhere today. In business seminars, therapy sessions, wellness retreats, schools, and even smartphone apps. It has become a global phenomenon, marketed as a cure for stress, a productivity booster, and a path to happiness. But behind this explosion of popularity lies a much deeper and more ancient practice. To truly understand mindfulness, we must trace it back to its roots in Buddhist practice more than 2,500 years ago. In the language of the Buddha, mindfulness is sati, a word that literally means to remember but goes beyond memory. It points to a state of clear awareness, a presence of mind that observes experience without clinging or aversion. The Buddha taught mindfulness as part of the Noble Eightfold Path, the practical path to liberation from suffering. Far from being just a relaxation technique, mindfulness was presented as a radical tool for awakening. The earliest and most detailed explanation of mindfulness comes from the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. In it, the Buddha outlines four fields of awareness: mindfulness of the body, observing breathing, postures, movements, and physical sensations; mindfulness of feelings, noticing whether experiences are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral; mindfulness of the mind, recognizing states such as greed, anger, restlessness, or clarity; mindfulness of mental phenomena, dhammas, observing thoughts, teachings, and mental patterns like impermanence and craving. The Buddha's insight was that suffering arises not from external events, but from how the mind clings, resists, and misperceives reality. By cultivating mindfulness, practitioners learn to see things as they are: impermanent, changing, and interconnected. This clear seeing breaks the chains of automatic reaction and opens the door to freedom. It is crucial to note that mindfulness was never meant to be practiced in isolation. It was woven into a larger framework of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Without compassion and ethical responsibility, mindfulness becomes hollow. Without concentration, it becomes scattered. Without wisdom, it becomes aimless. In this original context, mindfulness is not just about reducing stress, but about transforming life at its roots. It is a path to liberation, a training to free oneself from the cycles of craving, aversion, and delusion. What mindfulness really means beyond pop culture trends. In modern culture, the word mindfulness has been stretched, marketed, and simplified. For some, it means sitting quietly and breathing. For others, it is a productivity hack used by corporations to keep workers calm under stress. While these uses are not entirely wrong, they only scratch the surface of what mindfulness truly is. Mindfulness is often misunderstood as simply paying attention. While attention is part of it, true mindfulness includes a quality of awareness, non-judgmental, curious, and compassionate. It is not just noticing, but noticing with wisdom. For example, to eat mindfully is not just to taste the food, but to be aware of hunger, satisfaction, gratitude, and the interconnected chain of causes that brought the meal to the table. To listen mindfully is not just to hear words, but to notice tone, intention, and the emotions beneath them without rushing to respond. To work mindfully is not just to focus on tasks, but to be aware of one's stress, motivation, in the impact of actions on others. In other words, mindfulness is awareness infused with insight. It is not passive attention, but active observation that leads to understanding. Another key distinction: mindfulness is not the same as concentration. Concentration narrows the mind on a single object, like the breath. Mindfulness, by contrast, is open awareness, noticing whatever arises in the present moment, whether it is the breath, a thought, a sound, or an emotion. Concentration supports mindfulness, but mindfulness gives context and meaning. When stripped of its depth, mindfulness risks becoming a mere technique for stress relief. But when understood in its full sense, it is the supreme tool to master life because it helps us meet every experience, pleasant or painful, with clarity and freedom. Common misunderstandings: relaxation versus awareness, suppression versus observation. Because mindfulness has been popularized so quickly, it has also been widely misunderstood. Two of the most common misconceptions are: mindfulness is relaxation. Many people think mindfulness is about calming down, breathing slowly, and feeling peaceful. While relaxation can be a side effect, it is not the essence. True mindfulness is about seeing clearly, not necessarily feeling calm. Sometimes mindfulness reveals uncomfortable truths: anxiety, grief, anger. And instead of pushing them away, it teaches us to face them with openness. Thus, mindfulness is not an escape from difficulty, but a way of transforming our relationship to it. Mindfulness is suppression. Some believe mindfulness means controlling the mind or stopping thoughts. This is another mistake. The goal is not to suppress, but to observe. Thoughts will come, emotions will surge. Mindfulness does not fight them, but witnesses them without being carried away. Imagine standing by a river, watching leaves float by. You do not chase or stop the leaves. You simply notice them passing. That is mindfulness with thoughts. Another frequent misunderstanding is that mindfulness is selfish, a way of focusing only on oneself. But genuine mindfulness naturally expands into compassion. When we see our own suffering clearly, we recognize it in others. Awareness awakens empathy. Far from being self-absorbed, mindfulness makes us more present to the needs of those around us. These distinctions are vital because they shift mindfulness from being a quick fix to being a profound practice. It is not about temporary comfort, but about deep transformation. The neuroscience of mindfulness: brain plasticity, attention, emotional regulation. One reason mindfulness has gained global popularity is the growing body of scientific research showing its effects on the brain and body. Over the past 2 decades, neuroscience has revealed how mindfulness literally changes the structure and function of the brain. Brain plasticity. Studies using MRI scans have shown that regular mindfulness practice increases gray matter density in areas related to learning, memory, and emotional regulation. The hippocampus, important for memory and resilience, grows stronger, while the amygdala, associated with fear and stress, becomes less reactive. This means mindfulness doesn't just feel good, it rewires the brain for clarity and calm. Attention. Mindfulness trains attention by bringing the mind back to the present whenever it wanders. This strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, planning, and decision-making. People who practice mindfulness regularly show improved concentration and reduced mind wandering. Emotional regulation. One of the most powerful effects of mindfulness is its impact on emotions. Instead of being overwhelmed by anger or sadness, practitioners learn to observe emotions as temporary states. This reduces impulsive reactions and promotes resilience. For example, soldiers trained in mindfulness show lower rates of PTSD, and patients with depression experience fewer relapses. Health benefits. Beyond the brain, mindfulness lowers blood pressure, reduces chronic pain, strengthens the immune system, and improves sleep. It addresses not just mental but physical well-being, reflecting the Buddha's insight that body and mind are deeply interconnected. In essence, science confirms what ancient wisdom long taught. Mindfulness is not wishful thinking, but a trainable skill with measurable effects. It shows that freedom is not abstract. It is grounded in the biology of the human mind. Why mindfulness is not escapism, but empowerment. One final misunderstanding to address is the idea that mindfulness is a retreat from reality, a way to detach and live in passive acceptance. Critics sometimes argue that mindfulness makes people complacent, tolerating injustice instead of changing it. But this misunderstands the heart of the practice. The Buddha himself did not teach mindfulness as withdrawal, but as empowerment. To be mindful is to see reality as it is, without distortion. This clarity gives us the strength to act wisely. In personal life, mindfulness helps us face difficulties instead of avoiding them. For example, someone struggling with addiction can use mindfulness to recognize cravings as passing urges, breaking the cycle of compulsion. In relationships, mindfulness allows us to listen deeply, to respond instead of react, to speak with kindness instead of anger. In society, mindfulness awakens compassion. Activists trained in mindfulness report greater resilience, less burnout, and the ability to fight for justice without hatred. Far from being passive, mindfulness is the foundation of skillful action. By mastering the inner world, we gain clarity to navigate the outer world. By calming the storms of the mind, we find the strength to face the storms of life. Mindfulness does not say, accept things as they are and do nothing. It says, see things as they are, so you can respond with wisdom and compassion. That is true empowerment. 2. Mindfulness in practice. Tools to master your inner world. Core practices: breathing, body scan, mindful walking, mindful eating. At its core, mindfulness is not something mystical. It is a skill developed through practice. Just as muscles grow with exercise, awareness deepens with repeated training. The Buddha himself emphasized practical methods that anyone could apply, regardless of background or belief. 1. Mindful breathing. The breath is the simplest and most universal anchor for mindfulness. It is always with us, always flowing, always available. The Buddha described mindful breathing, anapanasati, as a gateway to concentration, clarity, and liberation. To practice, simply bring attention to the natural in and out flow of the breath. Notice the coolness of air entering, the warmth leaving, the rise and fall of the belly. When the mind wanders, which it will, gently return to the breath without judgment. Over time, the breath becomes more than air. It becomes a mirror of life itself, constantly changing, beyond our control, yet sustaining us in every moment. 2. Body scan. Another powerful practice is scanning through the body with awareness. This is not about imagining or visualizing, but directly feeling. Start at the top of the head and slowly move attention downward, observing sensations, warmth, tension, tingling, or even numbness. The goal is not to fix or change, but to notice. By attending to the body, we reconnect with the present and soften the grip of the restless mind. Modern research shows that the body scan reduces stress, helps with chronic pain, and brings awareness to areas we habitually ignore. It reveals that the body and mind are not separate. They mirror each other. 3. Mindful walking. Walking meditation is a way to bring mindfulness into motion. Instead of rushing from place to place, we slow down and notice each step. Pay attention to the contact of the foot with the ground, the shift of weight, the rhythm of movement. Let the breath synchronize with the steps. This practice transforms ordinary walking into a meditation. It is especially useful when the mind is restless. The body's movement grounds awareness. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, often reminded his students, walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. 4. Mindful eating. In a world of fast food and distracted meals, mindful eating is revolutionary. The Buddha encouraged awareness even in something as simple as chewing rice. To practice, eat slowly, noticing the colors, textures, and flavors. Pause before eating to reflect on gratitude. The sun, rain, soil, farmers, transporters. Countless beings made this meal possible. Chew thoroughly, tasting fully, without rushing. This practice not only improves digestion, but also transforms our relationship with food. It weakens habits of overconsumption and deepens appreciation for nourishment. Together, these 4 practices form a foundation: breathing, body awareness, mindful movement, and mindful nourishment. They teach us that mindfulness is not an escape from daily life, but a way of living daily life. Working with thoughts and emotions mindfully. If mindfulness stopped at the breath or body, it would be helpful but incomplete. The real challenge is working with the storms of thoughts and emotions. Left unchecked, the mind generates endless stories, worries, judgments, and fantasies. These mental patterns shape our reality more than the external world. The river of thoughts are like a river, endlessly flowing. We cannot stop the river, but we can step onto the bank and observe. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to watch thoughts as passing events, not absolute truths. For example, the thought, "I am worthless," may appear, but instead of believing it, we notice this is a thought arising and fading. Emotions as energy. Emotions are not enemies, but forms of energy. Anger, sadness, joy, all are visitors in the mind. Mindfulness teaches us to welcome them without clinging. When anger arises, instead of suppressing or exploding, we note, anger is present. We breathe, feeling where it lives in the body. As we observe, the emotion often shifts on its own, like a storm passing. RAIN technique. A modern adaptation of Buddhist practice is the RAIN method. Recognize what is happening. Allow it to be there without resistance. Investigate with gentle curiosity. Nurture with self-compassion. This approach helps us face difficult emotions without being consumed by them. By learning to observe thoughts and emotions, we loosen their grip. Instead of reacting impulsively, we gain freedom to respond wisely. Breaking cycles of craving, anger, and fear. The Buddha identified 3 root poisons that fuel suffering: craving, aversion, and ignorance. Mindfulness is the medicine that weakens their power. 1. Craving, tanha. Craving is the endless thirst for more. More pleasure, more possessions, more approval. It never satisfies, only multiplies. Mindfulness reveals the fleeting nature of pleasure and teaches contentment. By noticing craving as it arises, we see its impermanence and avoid being enslaved. 2. Anger, dosa. Anger burns the one who carries it more than the one it targets. Mindfulness interrupts anger by creating space. Instead of reacting instantly, we pause, breathe, and see the anger as energy moving through us. This pause transforms destructive reaction into wise response. 3. Fear, bhaya. Fear thrives in imagination, the mind projecting danger. Mindfulness grounds us in the present, where most fears dissolve. By observing fear as sensations in the body and thoughts in the mind, we reduce its power. Through repeated practice, mindfulness rewires our habitual responses. The cycles of craving, anger, and fear weaken, leaving room for compassion, patience, and equanimity. Mindfulness in relationships and communication. Mindfulness is not only for solitary practice, it blossoms in relationship. Many of our greatest joys and deepest wounds come from interactions with others. Applying mindfulness here brings profound healing. Mindful listening. Most people listen to reply, not to understand. Mindfulness transforms listening into a gift. When we truly listen, we give full presence. No judgments, no interruptions, no rehearsed responses. This kind of listening can heal relationships as the other person feels seen and valued. Mindful speaking. Before speaking, mindfulness asks, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? This filter prevents words spoken in anger or haste. Mindful speech is not about being soft, but about being clear and compassionate. Love and compassion. Mindfulness opens the heart. When we are present, we notice the suffering and beauty in others. This awareness naturally gives rise to compassion. Loving kindness, metta meditation, often practiced alongside mindfulness, trains the heart to wish well for all beings, dissolving barriers of self and other. By bringing mindfulness into relationships, we transform them from sources of conflict into opportunities for growth and connection. Mindfulness at work and in decision-making. In the modern world, work consumes much of life. Stress, deadlines, and constant communication can scatter the mind. Mindfulness offers tools to bring clarity and balance into professional life. Mindfulness at work. Begin the day with a few mindful breaths before checking emails. Take short pauses between tasks to reset attention. Practice single tasking instead of constant multitasking. When conflict arises, breathe before responding, choosing clarity over reactivity. Decision-making mindfulness sharpens judgment by clearing the noise of bias and impulse. Instead of rushing, we pause and ask, what is motivating this choice? Fear, greed, or wisdom? What impact will this have on myself and others? Does this align with my deepest values? Many leaders now integrate mindfulness to make ethical, sustainable decisions. It prevents burnout and fosters creativity by keeping the mind open instead of locked in stress. Turning suffering into growth through awareness. Perhaps the greatest gift of mindfulness is its ability to transform suffering into growth. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. Sickness, aging, and death touch everyone. But he showed that suffering can be a teacher. When we meet pain with mindfulness, we see its impermanence. We discover resilience. We learn compassion for others who suffer. Instead of being crushed by hardship, we grow wiser and kinder. For example, a person with chronic illness may use mindfulness to notice sensations without being overwhelmed, finding peace in the midst of discomfort. Someone grieving may use mindfulness to honor their emotions, letting grief flow without drowning in it, discovering love beneath the pain. A worker facing failure may use mindfulness to see it not as the end but as feedback, learning humility and persistence. Through awareness, suffering becomes not just something to endure, but something to transform. 3. Mindfulness for a troubled world, collective transformation. How mindfulness addresses modern crises, anxiety, consumerism, climate despair. Our age is marked by paradox. Never before have humans had so much technological progress, material abundance, and access to information. And yet never before have we been so overwhelmed by anxiety, depression, alienation, and ecological collapse. Anxiety epidemic. Anxiety has become one of the defining features of modern life. The constant flood of information, social media comparisons, economic insecurity, and global uncertainty leave minds restless. Mindfulness cuts through this chaos by training awareness to return to the present, one breath at a time. Anxiety thrives on what-if scenarios. Mindfulness anchors us in what is. Consumerism trap. Modern economies thrive on making people feel inadequate so that they keep buying more. Advertisements whisper, "You are not enough unless you buy this product." Mindfulness exposes this illusion by showing how craving never satisfies. A new phone or outfit may bring temporary joy, but mindfulness reveals the deeper truth. Happiness arises not from accumulation, but from contentment. Climate despair. As ecological crises deepen, many feel overwhelmed, helpless, or paralyzed. Some turn away, others fall into despair. Mindfulness offers balance. It encourages us to face the reality of destruction without collapsing under it. By practicing presence, we find the courage to act wisely, not out of panic, but out of love for the earth. Thus, mindfulness is not escapism. It is engagement. It helps us meet crises not with denial or despair, but with clarity, compassion, and resilience. Mindful education, raising children with presence. If mindfulness is to transform the world, it must begin with the young. Children today grow up in a storm of distractions, screens, schedules, and stress, often leaving them disconnected from their own feelings and from nature. Mindful education provides an antidote. Presence before curriculum. Children do not only learn from what adults say, they absorb how adults are. A mindful teacher or parent models calmness, patience, and presence. Simply pausing to breathe before responding can teach a child more than 100 lectures about emotional regulation. Practices for schools. Some schools now begin the day with a minute of silence, mindful breathing, or gratitude reflection. Studies show that such practices reduce bullying, improve focus, and increase empathy among students. Raising resilient children. Mindfulness gives children tools to face life's challenges. Naming emotions instead of being overwhelmed by them. Focusing attention in a world of endless distractions. Appreciating the present instead of chasing constant stimulation. A generation raised with mindfulness will not only be calmer individuals, but also more compassionate citizens. Mindfulness and social justice. Compassion without hatred. Social injustice. Poverty, racism, inequality, violence is one of humanity's deepest wounds. Movements for justice are essential, yet they often fall into cycles of anger, blame, and division. Mindfulness offers a way to pursue justice without hatred. Seeing shared humanity, mindfulness breaks down the illusion of separation. It reveals that beneath skin color, wealth, or ideology, we all share vulnerability, suffering, and longing for happiness. This recognition does not excuse injustice, but it prevents dehumanization. Responding without reacting. Activists who practice mindfulness learn to channel anger into clarity and compassion. Instead of burning out or becoming consumed by rage, they act from love for justice itself. As the Buddha said, hatred is never ended by hatred. Only love ends hatred. Examples in action figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and Thich Nhat Hanh embody this principle, fighting injustice fiercely but without losing compassion for opponents. Mindfulness makes justice sustainable, preventing cycles of revenge and planting seeds of reconciliation. Mindfulness and ecological living, awareness of interconnection. One of Buddhism's core insights is interdependence. Nothing exists in isolation. Modern ecology echoes this truth. Forests, oceans, air, animals, and humans form a web of life. Forgetting this leads to exploitation. Remembering it leads to care. Mindfulness of consumption. Each bite of food, each sip of water, each purchase carries hidden stories of labor, resources, and impact. Mindfulness trains us to pause. Do I need this? Where does it come from? What harm or healing does it bring? Such questions turn daily choices into ecological practice. Reconnecting with nature. Many people feel ecological despair because they live cut off from the earth. Mindfulness invites reconnection, walking barefoot on grass, listening to birds, feeling wind on the skin. Such simple acts restore belonging and awaken responsibility for the planet. Sustainable communities. When mindfulness spreads, communities naturally shift towards simpler living, renewable energy, plant-based diets, and shared resources. Not out of ideology, but out of felt understanding. Harming the earth is harming ourselves. The challenge of commercialized mindfulness. Avoiding dilution of the practice. As mindfulness gains popularity, it risks being diluted into a marketable commodity. Apps, workshops, and corporate programs sometimes reduce mindfulness to a stress reduction trick while stripping away its ethical depth. The risk of mindfulness. When mindfulness is used only to make employees more productive or consumers more compliant, it loses its transformative power. The original purpose was liberation, not performance enhancement. Safeguarding integrity. To preserve authenticity, mindfulness must remain tied to its ethical roots: compassion, non-harming, and wisdom. True mindfulness is not just about calming the mind, but also about awakening responsibility for oneself and others. Integration, not exploitation. This does not mean mindfulness should stay confined to monasteries. It can flourish in workplaces, schools, and hospitals, but always with integrity, always pointing toward freedom, not mere efficiency. A vision of a mindful future, individuals and societies living awake. Imagine a world where mindfulness is not the exception, but the norm. A world where children learn presence alongside math and science. Leaders make decisions after pausing to breathe and reflect on long-term consequences. Communities resolve conflicts through dialogue rooted in compassion. Societies measure success not by GDP alone, but by well-being, harmony, and sustainability. This vision is not utopian fantasy. Seeds of it already exist in mindful schools, compassionate organizations, and ecological movements around the world. What is needed is collective courage to nurture these seeds. From individual to collective awakening, the transformation begins within. One person pausing to breathe, one teacher listening mindfully, one leader acting with compassion. Like ripples on water, these acts spread, touching families, workplaces, communities, and eventually the world. Living awake. The ultimate promise of mindfulness is not escape from life, but awakening to it fully. To live awake is to meet each moment with clarity, love, and responsibility. In such living, mastery is not domination, but harmony.